Good morning, everyone. We're going to start the session. We're going to talk today about our experience with building apps with PhoneGap Cordova with a Drupal backend. A little bit about us. My name is Maarten. This is Fons Vandamme. We work at Entity One. We are a Drupal agency located in Ghent. We work with 8 people and we build sites like Oris, a small company website, one page with a custom built module. We build big sites like Sarman Group with a lot of products, a lot of domains, international, very big websites, and event-based websites. So, what are we as a Drupal agency building mobile apps for? Well, a while ago, we had a fun idea for an app. And who in this room hasn't had that by now? We wanted to build a very simple app if you're at a bar to order some drinks, to share these lists, to send it to the bar, etc. Quite a classic app, but with some extra fun features. We tried to outsource it because, hey, we're not mobile developers, we're Drupal developers. But that seemed to be ridiculous in pricing. We heard very huge prices as well from Belgian companies as from India and Pakistan and other faraway countries. So what the hell, we've built it ourselves since Cordova exists. If you want more information on the app, you can go to ordrup.io, you can download it there. What are we going to talk about today? First of all, what is Cordova? What is the difference between Cordova and native? What are some of the pros to use it? What are some of the cons to using it? Setting up a Cordova project using Ionic, that's an extra layer on top of Cordova. Then of course the integration with Drupal. We are at DrupalGap, so integration with Drupal Webservices and an SDK called DrupalGap. So first of all, what is Cordova? It's a development framework for mobile apps. It has one code base, or it's meant to have one code base so you can deploy to multiple platforms. iOS and Android, of course, but also Windows Phone and BlackBerry is supported by Cordova. Some versions no longer support BlackBerry. What it does, it wraps the code in a web view and packages as a native app. So it's a native app. Inside there's kind of a web browser and it displays everything there. This way, we can use technologies, web technologies, we as Drupalistas already know. We can use HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. So basically, it's not that different from what we're doing right now. We can start building right away. It has some pros and cons compared to native. First of all, native SDKs are great. There's a common UI, views, navigation. It's very streamlined in all the controls in the way it works. But the more platforms you need to support, the more problems you have. Some features are supported on one platform, not on the other platform. You have to keep these code bases in sync. Often one developer will know Java but will not know Swift or the other way around. So it cannot be maintained, the same piece of code, same functionality, same module, same feature cannot be maintained by the same developer. One of the common cons talked about when talking about Cordova is in accessing the hardware. And true, not all hardware is available from Cordova. But a lot of features, a lot of hardware features are available. Most commonly, like the accelerometer, the camera, and the GPS can be accessed from your Cordova app, can be accessed through JavaScript, through plugins. When is native better? Well, for example, heavy apps, for example, games, will run a lot faster on native code. This has to do with, of course, with the rendering. You're dependent on the speed of the browser inside in the app to render everything. It used to be a big disadvantage in Cordova, but the hardware in your phone has become a lot more powerful the last few years. So if you're building simple apps, if you're building regular apps, not very heavy apps, you can hardly notice any performance difference between native and between Cordova apps. Also, the adaptation of hardware features is usually a bit slower. When a new iPhone gets released, the SDKs get released with it, and you can, as an app developer, immediately start building on it. When you're using Cordova, you usually have to wait a bit for these features to come available, to get a good plugin, wait for someone to build a good plugin. And it's not very long, but it lags behind a bit, so you need to take that in account. One of the bigger disadvantages, depends on how you look at it, but Cordova apps can be decompiled. There's a lot of websites like this one, decompileandroid.com, where you can upload the APK, so the install file of an app, decompile it, and you can just view all the HTML, all the JavaScript, all the CSS. So be careful when inputting passwords or other sensitive data like that. We don't care that our code can be viewed because, hey, we're Drupalistas, we like open source, so we personally don't mind, but it's something to take in consideration, especially when on a security basis. Setting up a Cordova is pretty simple. First, you need to install Node.js on your system. You can go to nodejs.org to see the install instructions based on your operating system. Double check if your path is up to date. It should update your path variable to get to the Node.js package manager. This does not always happen automatically, as we've experienced at our office. Second, open a terminal or a command window, depending on your operating system. And then with this command, with one command, you can install Cordova. npm, so the Node package manager, can install Cordova in one command. Then to start a new project, you go to a folder and you type Cordova create a folder name where you want this project to be created in, space, then a project URL. It's the typical notation, so the reverse from a domain name, for example, be.entity1.project, space, and then a project name. So the first time project is the folder, the second time project is the project name. You go into the projects folder, into the right folder, and then you start adding platforms. You can add Android from any platform, but you can only add iOS from a Mac, and you can only add Windows from a Windows computer. It is possible to share this code, of course, with Git or something else. For example, I'm a Windows user, Fons is a Mac user. I added Android and Windows. Fons added iOS, and we share the code through Git. That's not a problem, but to actually add it, you need to be on the right operating system. And then you can start coding in your favorite IDE. The folder structure you get looks like this. It has a few main folders you don't really need to look at. It's auto-generated. The hooks, platforms, plugins, etc. Where your work needs to be done is especially in the www folder. All the HTML or the start page is in index.html, so just like a web page. These have references to index.js and index.css, where you can put your functionality and your layout respectively. It's all the same, just like in a browser. You can start working it. The index.js also has some code already there, some generated code to get you started. So like you have the jQuery document ready, something similar is already in the index.js to see if the app is fully loaded. To start to test the app, there are several options. First one, to run in a browser, is Cordova Surf. It will open a web browser, and there you can see in your standard web browser how the app looks right now. It's handy for debugging. You can use the console, you can use your inspector, etc. To actually run it on a device, you have two options. Cordova emulate, and then the platform, for example, Cordova emulate Android. In this case, this will load the standard Android emulator that you download with the SDK. Yes. This one is pretty bad. The standard emulator is very slow. It's buggy. It crashes a lot. There are better alternatives. Sorry. For example, Genymotion is a pretty good one. It's also free for non-commercial use to use it. But then you do not use Cordova emulate Android. You use Cordova run Android. Cordova run Android searches a connected device, so you connect a device. Make sure you have the developer options enabled in your settings, or you can run Genymotion, which runs in a virtual box, which Cordova also thinks is just a connected device. And then you can start playing around with your app on an actual device or the emulator.
Software development, so troubles and paradise. We noticed quite fast that at the moment it's the wild west for hybrid apps if you start researching on it. We started working on Order Up and we used Cordova, so we made some HTML, no CSS because we are developers. We added some JavaScript. We didn't even bother using jQuery because we thought the performance would be too bad. And then we tested the app. Everything functionally worked, but the user experience was pretty crappy. So we knew we needed to bridge the gap between our hybrid app or our web app and native apps. So we started to search for a solution. So we needed rich native style UI components and interactions like you would have in a native iOS or Android app. And we also needed UI APIs and not 20 jQuery widgets to simulate the behavior of a normal native app. So we were like, geez, we just want to build an app, not handle with all this crap. So we started to search for a solution on this problem. That's where Ionic came up. Ionic is a framework on top of Cordova. It uses Angular. Why does it use Angular? We tried to search about Angular, and then we noticed if you look at the Google Trends that Angular, if you compare to its rivals, is one of the most searched JavaScript libraries there is. So if you, for example, look at Ember.js, Knockout.js, Backbone.js, or Meteor.js, you see there's a lot less interest for those JavaScript libraries. So in our opinion, it was a good choice to go with Angular. So it's based on Angular. What does that mean? Angular is a proven solution for big web apps. A lot of big applications on the web use Angular. It's also used in the Drupal world. You see a lot of sites, for example, Studio Brussels now uses Angular in a headless setup, that is. Angular extends the HTML vocabulary. Normal HTML is very static, so Angular makes it dynamic. More about that later. So you have UI components using directives and services, and it's the directives, for example, that make it all more dynamically. You can create your own directives too. And what is a directive? It's a marker on your DOM. For example, on a link or on a button, you can put ng-click, and then you can add a function to it. And this way Angular will know, okay, when this button is pressed, I'll have to fire something in my controller, and that's defined as the function name. And it can also transform DOM elements or the children of DOM elements. Then you also have services. Services is used to organize your code and reuse pieces of your code. The people that used Drupal 8 already will know services. The same principles are used in Drupal 8 to reuse your code. Angular is also well documented. If you go online, you can find a lot about Angular. It's a lot harder on those other libraries to find good documentation, good examples, also best practices, because there are a lot of ways you can organize your code. So a lot of information is out there on the web. You can start on docs.angularjs.org, but you can also go to lynda.com, for example, for a very good AngularJS demo and introduction. Ionic is community powered. We all know what the power of a community does to a project because we all use Drupal. It has a very active developer forum. So sometimes Google just doesn't cut it if you have a problem you can't solve, and it's quite annoying to wrap your head around a problem for 3 days. So you can go to the forums and ask just state your problem there, and people will be glad to help you. Or you can go to IRC. There's an Ionic channel on Freenode. Also, it's open source, so everything is in the GitHub repo. If you think Ionic sucks and you want to fork it and make it even better, you can. Next to that, Ionic is native focused, so it really looks at what do native apps do, and it tries to be modeled off native apps, so it tries to really bridge the gap, as said earlier, and it's built to work with Cordova. Of course, it's a layer on top of Cordova. So in Cordova, for example, in the CLI, you have a lot of commands. It really builds on top of that and adds more nice features. More about that later in this presentation. It's also very performance obsessed. It does minimal DOM manipulation, and also the animations that are used are all hardware accelerated. So mobile phones got faster hardware-wise, so the hardware is leveraged by Ionic. Also, if you would create a Cordova app, you would have to delete the 300 ms tab delay you have in your browser. You had to do that yourself, but with Ionic, this is done automatically for you. It's not nice to have a tab delay on a web device. That's just not practical, so that's deleted. Ionic is easy to customize graphically. It looks amazing out of the box. I'm going to show you some components in a few minutes. It uses plain old CSS, so that's nice to know, and you can build on top of that. It can be customized graphically also with Sass out of the box. So if you like the way it looks, but you want to change around the color schemes, all you have to do is change around the variables in your Sass file, and everything will change the way you want. So for us, Maarten and I, developers, that was very refreshing because we didn't want to spend 100 hours tweaking our CSS and 10 hours developing. We want it the other way around, so we don't have to bother about really styling our app. If you download the app, you'll see it looks quite nice. Of course, we can still improve a lot, but we are in the first phase, so it's better than what we had in Cordova. We were a bit embarrassed to show it to even friends and family. What's also nice about Sass out of the box is you have like 80 plus mixins that come with it out of the box. It's very nice to use also in matters of code reuse in your styles or in your styling. Ionic also comes with icons out of the box, because an app without icons is pretty dull. For example, the menu without a hamburger icon and just a text menu, it looks a bit silly. So if you go to ionicons.com, you'll see all the icons that come with Ionic. Okay, a lot of talk. For the people who are new to this concept, how does it all come together? So at the top layer, you have your code. This would be HTML, CSS. You can generate the CSS from Sass, but that's up to you. And you would have your Angular script. By default, in your Angular, you would have an app.js and a controller.js. The app.js just bootstraps your whole app, and also make sure the routing is done properly, and your controller.js would have all the business logic you will write in it. The level below that you have Ionic, which, as I stated before, is built on top of AngularJS and is built then again on Cordova, which wraps all your code in WebView and then delivers it to native apps, all nice and wrapped up. So as Maarten said before, single source for multiple platforms. This is something that was very important to us, or the app wouldn't be around if that wasn't possible. Next up, a small overview of the Ionic components. I hope the internet works, and otherwise you'll have a GIF to just look at. I think I'm going to give you guys some homework, and you can check out the components at home. To give you an overview, you have menus, sliding menus, tabs, nice and organized lists, fixed footers, everything you need to start building your app right away. So if you're interested, I advise you to take a look at it at home. No, the server cannot be located. Okay, so then we have the GIF to look at. Everyone side, okay. Next thing, Ionic CLI. We are developers, so we are really fans of CLI to speed things up. What does the Ionic CLI do for us? It makes sure we can create projects, new projects, as Maarten showed already, from starter templates. So you have templates you can start off. There are 3 templates currently used in Ionic. You have the tabs template, which puts tabs on the bottom of your page to navigate through your app, so you don't have to bother about that. You have a template that already implements a side menu, which works with swiping and all the nice, neat stuff you also have in native apps. And you have a blank template. If you want to do everything yourself, you still can. What Ionic CLI also does is boilerplate your app. So if you start a new app, I'll show you on the next slide how to do that. It makes all the files in the right directory structure so you can start developing right away. Very important, so you don't have to figure out where to put everything. Of course, if you make really big apps, there's a lot of documentation out there on how to organize your code then. It comes with pre-configured tools like Gulp, SAS and Bauer. It's very nice to have those tools right away. You don't want to add them in later or do all the stuff manually that these tools do for you. One of the nicest things that we use all the time is it enables you to start developing locally and testing locally without installing anything, and it works with live reloads. I'll show you on the next slide how that works. And also something the people that Drush use will like is you can update the Ionic framework from the CLI. Like if you would update Drupal core from Drush, the same works with the Ionic CLI, so you don't have to bother doing that manually, because mostly that's very bad for your heart. Ionic CLI, so now we're going to install a new project. So the first thing you need to do is use Node Package Manager to install Ionic and Cordova. The next thing is you just call Ionic start. You say my app or a new app or whatever your app is called, and then you call the template you want to use. In this example, I use side menu. So the side menu that you can see that is used in order up if you download the app is already in place. Then you can just change directory to my app, and you can call Ionic serve from your terminal or command line, and your app will be launched in your browser. The moment you start changing HTML, CSS or the SAS that compiles the CSS, or even your JavaScript, everything will be pushed to your browser automatically, and you can start debugging, testing and playing around with Ionic. Very nice to have this out of the box without having to search half an afternoon how to get it running. The next thing I'm going to talk to you about is Ionic View. So if you would create apps, and you have an iPhone or an Android phone, and you want to show the app you made last night to your friends. Normally you would have to package it and put it on your phone. This is where Ionic View comes in. Ionic View is an app you can download. If you create an Ionic account, you can just, by using the command Ionic upload, you can upload your app to the cloud of Ionic, and you can start testing your app right in the Ionic View app. This is something that's very nice to start gathering feedback right away when you start developing an app. Don't work on it for 4 months and then show it to your friends. Try to show it as soon as you can to people you know, so you can gather feedback right away. So you always have the latest version of your app with you, which is nice. Ionic View, the app, is very nice and it works very nice. And it's nice to know that Ionic View is also made with Ionic itself. It would be kind of funny if they made it in another technology. So surprise, surprise. The next thing is Ionic Lab. Maarten and I haven't used Ionic Lab. It's kind of new. But what is Ionic Lab? If you're not a fan of CLI, you say, command line, I hate it. You can just download Ionic Lab, and it's a suite to create apps. Ionic Lab now runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux. So I think everyone is covered and can start using it right after this session. So that was Ionic. We have an app in place, but of course we need data. We don't want to have a static app, so we want to pull data from, in our case, a Drupal 7 backend. You have two modules to integrate with a Drupal backend. The first one is services. I don't know if anyone in the room used services module before. Raise your hand. Okay, so quite a lot. In our experience, services is quite configuration oriented. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And it says out of the box that it just supports whatever Drupal core supports. Then next to it, REST-JS module. Does anyone use the REST-JS module? 2 hands. Not a surprise to us. Not a lot of people use it. But in our opinion, it's a lot more developer oriented. You have documentation in the module on how to integrate or work on it, and it's based on the entity API itself, which for us was a lot better. It also comes packaged with a basic authentication module. You don't have to use it, but I advise you to use authentication to talk with a backend from your app, or otherwise you're in for a surprise. So based on our own experiences, we prefer to use the REST-JS module for now. An example on how to communicate with your Drupal backend, if you want to authenticate with it, the first thing you would need to do is request a token. How do you request a token? You would send a get to REST-JS/session/token, and in your header you would put accept application/JSON, and your authorization or your basic authorization key you would also send. The basic authorization key is in fact a base 64 encode of your username, colon, password. A pitfall here, very important, your username has to start with REST-JS. I think it took us, I'm embarrassed to say how long it took us to figure this one out. If in some way you say, hey, I don't want to use REST-JS in my username, you can change this around. You just have to change the conf REST-JS_basic_auth_user_regex variable in your settings file, so you can change it to whatever you want. If your call succeeds, you'll get the XCSRF token in return. And this token is very important to use in all the other calls you'll do to your backend. For example, to get, post, delete stuff in your backend. So now that we got our XCSRF token, we can communicate with our backend. So for example, we want to get a node and we know the ID, so we would call get node/55 to get the node with ID 55. Then we just put in our header accept application/JSON again. We put our authorization key in it again. Again, the same basic authentication key that is base64 encoded. And then we also attach our XCSRF token. Again, very important. Also, again, embarrassed to say how long it took us to figure out this one. It used to be that you had to type X_CSRF_ token in your header, and all of a sudden that changed to dashes. So don't make the same mistake as we did. So now you know. And this call will return you the node with NIT55 and a JSON format. Of course, we can also post stuff to our backend. Again, we just now, that's not a get we do anymore, but a post. So we would post to /node, again, accept application /JSON. The authorization key, again, basic 64 encoded of username, password. We add our XCSRF token, and then we add the data. Very important to add the data, or you can't add anything to the node. So in this example, we add a basic page with title. This is a title, original. The type is page, and the field body is this is the body. And this would create a new node if your authorization succeeds, of course. So that was web services in Drupal 7. Now web services in Drupal 8, we don't need any module no more because REST module is in Drupal 8 core. So applause for that. Good job, core developers. We started using the Drupal 8 as a backend to connect to, but we installed Drupal 8 Beta 4. Everything was working fine. We upgraded it to Drupal 8 Beta 14 and everything melted away. Everything was broke. So sorry, we went back to Drupal 7 for now. Forgive us, please. Hopefully next year we'll show you a Drupal 8 backend with order up with 1 million downloads.
All right. Last thing we're going to talk about is DrupalGap. DrupalGap is made as an SDK for building mobile apps with Drupal. It has an entire development platform. It also has a Drupal module you can connect with, and you have a starter app. So you create a Cordova app, and you can download from the URL you see here. You can download a kind of a starter app, put it inside your new Cordova app, and start developing and start connecting with your app. It offers a lot of functionality, but it's pretty complicated to get started with. If you want a tightly integrated app with your site, where, for example, the users can log in with their Drupal credentials in the website, this is definitely worth looking at. It offers a lot of functionality out of the box, and it has a Drupal-like code style, which was pretty uncommon for me when I started it. For example, it uses JDrupal. I've never heard of JDrupal before using DrupalGap, but it's a JavaScript library in which you can code JavaScript a bit like you code modules in Drupal. It's a bit weird, but it's pretty powerful once you get past the setup. There's one pitfall there when you just install the module with Drush, for example, and you auto-download the dependencies. It will download a wrong module. There's a module called views.json, which is part of the views data source module, but there's no actual views data source module. So you have a views data source download. There's no .module file in there. There are different files there, different modules. For example, views_json is there. You have to install or enable that one first, and then have Drush, for example, and all the other modules. So, in conclusion, when you have billions to spend and have a cool idea for an app, go native. Otherwise, especially as Drupal developers, it's a very good idea to use Cordova, Cordova and Ionic to start building right away. We will upload the slides just after this presentation to our website, and to our blog. We will also upload it to the DrupalCamp website, and you can find us at entity1.be or on Twitter. But if you have any questions, you can ask them right now. Anyone have a question for us? For him? No questions? Okay, you can always, we'll be here all day. You can come to us if you have, if anything pops up, you can come talk to us. Thank you very much.